could say, right? Let's light this candle.
I think you should consult with Connor or Carter.
For coolness?
Yes.
Because you're not cool?
Or because you're not cool.
Oh, because I'm not cool. I need coolness lessons. All right. Today's going to be wonderful, folks. Peyton and I, Church Without Walls, we're going to talk about Neil deGrasse Tyson and Steakums and the Twitter feud between outraged Christians and a scientist who knows how to tweak them frequently. This and more on this episode of Church Without Walls. Hang with us. It's going to be a cool, casual day, and maybe we'll learn something. We'll see. Hey, Peyton.
Hello?
What's happening?
You don't usually talk to me. What's up?
I don't know. I just thought I'd say hello. It's one of those days. We're going to have some fun today, but to set this up and how we can learn from it, recently, Neil deGrasse, I don't even know how to say his name. I mean, anyone with, who's mostly known by his initials, like NDT. I like NDT. Can I just say NDT for the rest of the show?
I say Neil deGrasse.
deGrasse. Yeah, that's not respectful, but okay. So, Neil deGrasse...
I didn't read it right the first time.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so it was harmless. You weren't making a commentary.
No, I read it wrong. And
you read it wrong.
instead of grass, I read grease.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
That'd be a really bad name to have.
DeGreaser is a handy tool. Neil deGrasse Tyson... Can you go let Bella out?
I'm not a dog.
Neil deGrasse Tyson recently, and if you don't know him, he kind of has filled the shoes of Carl Sagan in that world, in the science world. He's a science spokesperson, and oftentimes he's mistaken as an atheist. He's not an atheist, but he's... what would you call him? Some people would think of him as a hostile agnostic because he seems to tweak religious people every now and then, and he's anointed that way. He's got a gift that way, and I don't think oftentimes it's purposeful. I think people look for it and find it now, but then sometimes it is purposeful, and I think this one may have been one of those times because he put a tweet out recently on Twitter that says... Oh, I should have brought that into the show, right? So people could see it. Recently, he tweeted, is that the way to say it? The good thing about science is that it's true, whether or not you believe in it. I'm going to try and get this picture so y'all can see it. So think about it for a second as I'm trying to bring it into the show. Boom. So, obviously that got the attention of a lot of people because, and many theists, many of them who are my friends, posted about it. Some of them were outraged and candidly, I'm bringing it in, thought this was a swipe at philosophy and theology and Christianity and anything that's not science, which... I could see how they took it that way. However, if you look at the statement again, which we will in 1 second, as soon as I find it for you, here it is. So I'm going to put it up in just a second. Bang. Here we go. All right. So this is the exchange between Steakum, yes, the company that sells frozen steak slices, and Neil deGrasse Tyson, who said the good thing about science is that it's true whether or not you believe in it. And this started a firestorm, not just with Steakum, but with a lot of people online and so forth. And they didn't actually, I'm going to keep that up. What they heard is Neil saying that science is the only truth. Look again, that's not what he said. But what they heard was that the good thing about science is that it's the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and nothing else is true. That's what they heard. That's not what he said, but that's what they heard. And I got to tell you, as a Christian who's been in and out of the culture wars and who used to get my nose easily bent out of shape and offended whenever somebody in the secular world would say something that was even partially negative, or what I took to be partially negative about my faith, we'd get our panties in a wad and have a community kvetch and tear that person down. It's what Julia Galef calls the soldier mindset. We're protecting and defending something. And in this case, we're protecting and defending the lion that we have in our little cage that we think needs to be protected and defended when it doesn't. And oftentimes we'll end up putting our foot in our mouth. And I'm going to say, I'm going to take the side of Neil here and say, I'm not going to excuse everything he did, because I do think he was trying to tweak a group of people that are so predictable they were tweaked. But I do want to say that what he said, I think, if you look at it generously, is not harmful and is not a critique of faith and is something that we all really, truly believe. Now, had he said it slightly differently, had he said the laws of nature, had he said the laws of physics, the good thing about the laws of physics is that they're true whether or not you believe in it. If he said the law of gravity, the good thing about the law of gravity is that it's true whether or not you believe in it. And, you know, you might not believe in gravity, but if you walk off the John Hancock building, you're going to become a believer, you know, in the amount of time it takes you to be paced on the sidewalk of a Chicago sidewalk. But the way he posed it, in a world that believes that science and faith is at war, and this is the funny thing, this is the irony of the whole thing. Many of the people I saw who got really bent out of shape about this are adamant that there's no war between science and faith. And then a simple statement like this on Twitter ignites them, and they clutch their pearls and swoon onto their swooning couch in outrage that somebody might have said something like this. So let's look at it. Let's pick it apart. Let's visit Stakem and what they said. But I think we haven't been fair to what he's saying here. I don't think he's saying that science is infallible, because he knows. And in the article that he shared with this quote, he talks about how we have progressive enlightenment with science. But what he's talking about is the scientific method and the discoveries of science. And when he says we're not going to revisit the shape of the Earth, like, right, that's not still under debate. The shape of the Earth, not under debate. You know, the fact that the Earth travels around the sun, no longer a debate, because science is pretty clear about those things. And he included, I think, the DNA makeup, the 98% similarity between chimpanzees and humans in our genetic makeup. We're not going to revisit that. It's not controversial. It's kind of accepted. And so here's what he means by that. Now, why does he say this? Does he say it just to tweak a bunch of Christians who have nothing better to do than to kvetch and moan online? No, I think he's saying it because we still live in a world where science and faith are at odds. I just saw a video last night for New St. Andrews College advertising why you should go there, why your children should go there. And it's a 4-minute commercial that basically mocks the idea that the pandemic is real. They call it the faux apocalypse, laughing at the faux apocalypse. And they say, your kid comes here, he doesn't have to wear a mask, and he doesn't have to stand 6 feet apart. So this is a group of Christian people who are basically mocking the understanding and the accepted nature of a global pandemic. And this is a war against science. This is science denial in modern times. It's not the Scopes trial, but you don't have to go back that far to see modern science denial and people of faith involved in modern science denial. So I think Tyson sees this happening. He sees that the one group of people that are digging their feet in about vaccines and masks happen to be evangelical Christians. And he says something that in his world is kind of a given. However, now, having said that, there are scientists, other scientists, who take issue with him because of the precision of his language. And we're going to visit that too, because I understand that. And I'm going to point out how these people of faith, who are also scientists, might not be treating him as generously as we treat our own apologists. And to do this, let's have some fun. I want to introduce you to Abraham Piper. Abraham Piper is a TikTok sensation. He's got over 900,000 followers. Some people might not know, he's one of the sons of John Piper, the famous Calvinist preacher, hardcore determinist Calvinist. Abraham has left the plantation. He believes that strain of Christianity is bat crap crazy. And that's why some of his videos are exploring that avenue. But here he finds himself enjoying the retorts of the guy behind the Steakum Twitter account who took issue with Neil deGrasse Tyson. And I'm just going to play this short TikTok from Abraham and give you an idea of the other view, the scientific view that holds Neil to a higher bar precision in his language, and why some scientists find his statement to be unsound. Here's Abraham Piper talking about that.
Fighting since 2018. Check out their latest skirmish. It starts with this unintentional volley from Neil. The good thing about science is that it's true whether or not you believe it. But Steakum? They're not having it. Log off, bro. But then they expand on their critique. Science itself isn't true. It's a constantly refining process used to uncover truths based in material reality, and that process is still full of mistakes. He has no respect for epistemology. They're not done. Science is an ever-refining process to find truth, not a dogma. And of course, other people chimed in. We even have Hank Green offering to moderate the debate. But then they remember their place in this world. We're a brand-selling product, so everything we do is based in self-interest. I know this is all a game, this is all marketing, but here they go full authentic. Just shilling frozen beef by commenting on things I probably shouldn't comment on. LOL. I love whoever's behind these tweets, and I'll be honest, I kind of want to hire you. When you're done selling frozen meat, come sell jigsaw puzzles with me. Until then, Steakum jigsaw puzzle? Yeah? Have you guys seen the squabble that Steakum got in with Neil deGrasse Tyson on Twitter?
All right. I love Abraham Piper. I love his TikTok page. It makes you think. And there you have it. There you have the squabble. And everything Steakum said there is true. It's true if you heard what Neil said in a very narrow way. And if you didn't allow him to develop his thought process, which is what I just gave to you. And if you understand, if you're being generous. Now, as a Christian, I think we should always ask ourselves, am I being generous with the person I'm discussing? Am I being generous with what they're saying? Am I listening to understand, or am I listening to reply? Because I would say to you, a lot of the reaction to Neil deGrasse Tyson wasn't listening to understand, they were listening to reply. And a lot of people were offended that he seems to be implying that philosophy and theology are second-tier avenues of wisdom because they're not concrete. Now, I hate to say this to my philosopher, theological friends, that's true. It's true. That's not saying there's no truth in philosophy and theology. It's saying it's a different kind of truth. It's a truth that you can't test under a microscope or a telescope or in a petri dish. It's not mathematical truth where you find proofs and certainty. It's not scientific proof that can undergo the scientific method and be tested and refined. It contains opinion. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean that it's not true. I'm not saying that Christianity isn't true. I'm not saying that you can't find truth in reading Plato. But Plato or even Pythagoras. The philosophy of Pythagoras is very different than the Pythagorean theorem. Very different, right? And if you don't believe that as a Christian, if you think that there's Christian truth and that Christianity is true, I would have to ask you, which Christianity? Catholicism, Protestantism, Eastern Orthodox, the Eastern Orthodox Church, the Coptic Church. Which Christianity are you talking about? Because if you look at Christianity, there's some 33,000 varieties right now. And some of them, frankly, most of them, don't believe the 32,999 other varieties are authentic. The Church of Christ believes they're the only church. There's a faction of the Roman Catholic Church that believes they're the only church. I grew up in a dispensational movement that thought they had the sole truth and everyone else was a little bit shady or on a shaky ground. And the truth is, when you try and make Christianity, which is a theology or a philosophy, equal to mathematics, something that's provable beyond doubt or that's certain, you don't increase faith. You're not flattering your idea of faith. You're killing it. You're killing the element of faith that is required in theology or philosophy, or that is our confidence in a certain argument, right? You can't argue that philosophy is true because which philosophy? Plato's or Aristotle's, because they differ. And it's not a cohesive field. And philosophy pretty much is at sword points with each other. So which philosophy is true? The truth is that there's truth to be found in many worldviews, but not all of it, not any one of those worldviews is 100% true. Not even Christianity. Why? Because you have to define which brand of Christianity is true. Now, here's a place I do think where Christians lose it all the time. I'm in a couple of groups, science faith groups, that went crazy over Neil Tyson's argument, but they have often shared apologists, some famous Christian apologists, and I'll just say their names so you could look it up. Frank Turek and Cameron Bertuzzi are Capturing Christianity, who sign off with who have a motto, who even sell T-shirts and shirts that say BTW. By the way, Christianity is true. Now, why does Cameron do that? If you're going to question Neil's motives, why does Cameron do that? And I'll tell you why he does that. He's throwing red meat to the Amen choir that follow him, the cage stage apologists that follow him, and he's trying to tweak the online atheists who differ with him. And then you can ask yourself, is that really a very Christian attitude to take? Is that something John Lennox would do? I don't think so. Yet nobody posts on their science and faith page, is Cameron wrong for posting this? BTW, Christianity is true. Because logically and theologically, he's not. He's wrong. And he's more wrong than Neil Tyson is. He's more wrong than Neil Tyson because we as Christians have a higher bar that we should stand up to. The question that we should really ask is, are we being persuasive? And are we taking the bait? So I think Neil deGrasse Tyson expected a certain response from people when he tweeted that out, and we walked right into the briar patch. And I think it made him smile, and I think it makes that world smile, that world that has Penn Jillette on the couch, and that would have had Christopher Hitchens on the couch, and that does have Neil deGrasse Tyson and others on the couch, and they say, "Hold my beer, watch this. I'm gonna get the Christians crazy on this one." It's what happens every time some channel comes out with a show that is slightly controversial. about the faith, and then people go crazy and say we should ban this, or we should, what's the word called when you like don't go to the store and stuff?
Couch potato.
Well, that's one of them. No, I'm talking about when a group of Christians says, we're not going to shop there anymore, or we're not going to go to Disneyland. There's a word for it. I'm having a brain
The little
cramp.
piggy didn't go to the market.
Yeah, the little piggy didn't go to the market. You're really not helping here. But you know what I mean. Christians put a blockade around a business or something because Ben and Jerry's said something they didn't like, or voted for something they didn't like. And so I think this is kind of happens. And the Christians, when they react to this, they don't do it generously. They're not listening to understand. They're listening to reply. And they often have a soldier mindset. If I can make one recommendation to you above all right now, it's go out and buy or click on Amazon and purchase Kindle, Audible, or paperback version or hard copy version of Julia Galef's book, Boycott. Thank you. Somebody texted me. Boycott. Yes, Christians, culture warriors love to boycott things. Thank you, G. Where was I going? But I think, Julia Galef's book. Julia Galef just wrote a book about the scout mindset and the soldier mindset, and what's a better view of reality. And too many Christians are wrapped up in the soldier mindset. And the soldier mindset is motivated reasoning. The advanced psychological word for it is motivated reasoning. It's this idea that we are a soldier that is protecting something and defending something, as opposed to a scout who goes into the world and views the landscape and tries to see the world as it is, the reality of the world, where the bridge is, topographical advantages, and it's the difference between, for example, another analogy is, are you a judge or are you a lawyer? Right? A lawyer is fighting for one side and only takes that side, right? A judge is hearing both sides, or the difference, between an umpire and a manager of a baseball team. And the argument here is that Christians should be umpires, right? Because Christianity has been in the wrong a lot. And to not recognize that is not persuasive to people who aren't already in our tribe. And it's a turnoff. And here's one of the problems with Christian apologists, is we get caught up in this idea of defending everything that's in our jersey. It's kind of like if you're in a family and you have, let's say, this drunk uncle who ruins every family gathering, and you're talking about this drunk uncle with some family, and you're maybe complaining about him, and it's okay that you do it, but the moment that your neighbor comes over from next door and overhears the conversation and then starts to agree and add his own opinion about the drunk uncle, all of a sudden you get defensive of it. And you're like, wait a minute. Christians have that tendency where we're going to dig in and, we could criticize Christianity, but don't dare the agnostic or the atheist online do it, because all of a sudden that's going to get our dander up. And we broaden the scope of what the New Testament tells us about apologetics, which is to give every man an answer if he asks. If he asks, not unsolicited, be ready to give every man an answer, not all the answers, an answer about the hope that lies within us. And I often say the hope that lies within us is not the arguments that apologists use today. Under Enlightenment thinking. It's not the Kalam cosmological argument. It's not the fine-tuning argument. It's Jesus Christ. And the further we get into these other things, the further we chase down other rabbit holes, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be proficient in those discussions, but those discussions should lead people to Christ and the gospel, and not be their own islands. And oftentimes in apologetics, they're their own fields. And you never get to Christ. You never get to Jesus. You never get to the gospel. So I think Christians should ask themselves, first of all, in this Neil deGrasse Tyson situation. First of all, am I being generous with what Neil said here? Am I really trying to hear what he's saying? Am I straw manning his argument? Am I just waiting for him to stumble a little bit because he wasn't precise in his language so I can get out my Christian armor and, a full frontal assault on the Philistines? Or I could do my Jericho march around his Twitter feed. And quite frankly, we have to ask ourselves, is that persuasive to people who are on the fence or who are looking in from outside? And quite frankly, it's not. Oftentimes it's ugly. Oftentimes it's foolish. And oftentimes it's hypocritical in the sense that we give capturing Christianity a pass with something as ludicrous as selling a coffee cup that says BTW, Christianity is true, which, by the way, is never going to lead an atheist or an agnostic, or at least a thoughtful person, to Christ. They're not going to say, one day, I could have had a V8. Oh, that's genius. No, that's a Christian way of holding up a middle finger to somebody. That's what it's doing. It's the Christian middle finger. And the only thing it does is get all the cage stage Christian apologists who have the enthusiasm of ignorance to say, yeah, amen, let's punch that atheist in the mouth. And it's really no better than what you're saying about NDT. Yet NDT didn't mean it in that way. NDT is looking around and he's seen people who are still fighting against science, still fighting against things that the rest of the world has moved beyond. And he still sees Discovery Institute and RTB and AIG. He still sees the creation science movement arguing against things that the scientific community doesn't even consider a challenge anymore. We've moved beyond it, and we're not talking about the shape of the earth or the fact that the earth journeys around the sun, or the fact that chimp DNA is 98% the same as human DNA, and herbs and these other things, chromosome 2, all these things we're not, the rest of the world isn't fighting against. There's only one little conclave that still has their dander up and is tilting at windmills, and they happen to be evangelical Christians. And so I think something like this is an opportunity that we've missed now, because we've missed an opportunity to earn a hearing with people who might be considering the faith. And now we've put ourselves in a position to be, again, on the other side of science. And I say this as somebody who saw a lot of friends who are scientists, who are Christian, who fell right into the briar patch when NDT tweeted that, just like Sakums did. Now, our side's going to love it. Our side's going to be like Abraham Piper and say, yeah, more of this. And the rest of the world's going to look at it and say, wow, I don't think they understood what he meant. Now, he used the word science in a way that he had to qualify, because if he would have said, here's the funny thing. Here's what's crazy about this. Christians believe, at least most Christians who don't have a problem with science, they believe in Francis Bacon's argument about the two books, that God wrote the two books of nature and scripture, right? Of general revelation and special revelation. This was Bacon's argument. That God both spoke the world into existence and the word into existence. So there's these two books, and God wrote them both. But the funny thing is, Christians oftentimes are arguing against the nature book, what NDT calls science, that which we could know of the material world from material means. So oftentimes Christians are so defensive of this book, right? And they don't like how people sneer at this book from within and without the church. Some have even accused me of sneering at it. But they're so defensive of this book that they attack God's other book. You know, unintentionally or unknowingly, that they think the books are at war with each other. And the books can't be at war with each other if they have the same author. Now, the question is, do they have the same author? We could talk about that on another show. Because God doesn't make typos in one of the books. And, well, that's for another show. But the problem is Christians perpetuate this false idea that there's a war between science and faith. And to be honest with you, if you qualify the term science and faith, you have to admit that in some corners of the faith, there is a war against science. When you argue against, you know, the world's leading experts on how to handle a global pandemic, and they're saying to you, look, as information is coming in, we're learning more. So they're telling you that they don't have infallible knowledge, but we're holding them to that kind of a bar and then dismissing everything they say because they don't have perfect knowledge of something, because we have that enlightenment mindset that we have perfect knowledge in the Bible, and these guys don't have perfect knowledge because they're fallible man, so we can't trust them at all. There are Christians who believe there's no war between faith and science, and yet they are deaf and dumb to their fellow Christians who are at war against reality. And Tyson sees this, and so he tweaks it every now and then. And we fall into the same trap, and we miss an opportunity. So I do want to show you just one clip of John Lennox. Now, I don't agree with John Lennox on his understanding of science and you know, in every jot or tittle. But I do agree with his approach to apologetics in many ways. And here, in front of a group of Harvard medical students, believe it or not, what are the odds that a Christian could get a group of Harvard students to cheer his delivery of the gospel, right? I mean, this is Harvard, of course, is famous for booing Alexander Solzhenitsyn, but John Lennox had this group of Harvard medical students who, by the way, if you took a poll of them, the majority would be probably nones or dones. And they cheer him at the end of his answer here. I'm not going to play the whole answer. I'm just going to play the beginning where John Lennox has the humility to concede that Christianity isn't perfect. And I want you to see how John Lennox, by admitting that Christianity is flawed when it comes to certain areas, like living up to its own morality, or the fact that there's been violence in the Lord's name, even recently. And he concedes these points because they're not worth defending, because they're not part of our apologetic. And to try and deny them is to lose a hearing with people who say, wait a minute, I've seen buses blow up in Ireland in Jesus' name. You know, I know history, and I know all the awful things that have happened in Jesus' name. Not just in history, but my own church experience might have been flawed. And so John here doesn't deny any of that. As a matter of fact, he goes on to disarm that argument, and then he presents the gospel. And I'll include this clip in the show notes so you could watch the full clip. And later on the show, I'm going to do a deep dive into it and play 30 seconds of it and tell you what he's just done, because this is a masterclass on persuasion. And this is something that is sorely missing in Christendom today. This idea that you have respect for your audience, no matter where they are or how they think, and that you're actually trying, as Paul in the marketplace tried, to persuade them that the truth you're sharing with them is worthy of a hearing.
Science and religion, but there are different religions. Now, this is an immensely important question, because leaving Christianity outside altogether, religions do not agree with each other, and it's idle to pretend that they do. Science is an international discipline, and of course we are all aware of the sad fightings even within Christendom in my own country of Northern Ireland. So I've got a lot to answer for in a way. And how do I approach this question? Well, in exactly the same way as everything else. I find, let's take the three great monotheistic religions. I have many Muslim friends and Jewish friends in many parts of the world. And when it comes to the resurrection of Jesus, there are three different views, as you know. The Jews believe, my Jewish friends believe, that Jesus died and did not rise. My Muslim friends believe he didn't die. And I believe that he both died and rose. They cannot all be true. How do you approach a question like that? Well, first of all, I step completely back from it.
All right. I'm just going to give you that taste of it, and I want to show you what he's done in just that short segment. Lennox has diffused the bomb or the excuse that atheists and agnostics use to dismiss religion, or at least the Christian faith. They say, well, you know, God is not good, Christopher Hitchens, because all wars, I mean, he basically says that most wars are because of religion, arguments between different religious groups, or because these nations have this primal understanding of how the world works, and so they go to war with each other. And what does Lennox do there? Lennox doesn't try and defend Christianity because he doesn't argue that the Crusades really weren't that bad. I've seen Catholics argue that the Inquisition really wasn't that bad. It's blown out of proportion. I've seen Christians argue that the Salem witch trials have kind of been blown out of proportion. They really didn't. He doesn't do any of that because it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. And people who aren't already wearing the Christian jersey and cheering with the Christian pom-poms roll their eyes when Christians trying to defend the indefensible. Lennox doesn't do that. He concedes it. Not worth talking about. Yes, and he even brings up Ireland, that he's from Ireland, and people know the Catholics versus Protestant thing in Ireland, and it's rather recent. You don't have to go back 500 years. And what does he say? We as Christians have a lot to answer for when it comes to that. How does he start this? He starts this with the tip of the hat to science. He says science is an international discipline. He's basically saying there's universal agreement about science around the world. There isn't about faith. He concedes that. He doesn't argue it. He concedes it because it's not the hill you want to die on. And yet so many Christians today want to die on that hill. Oh boy, they are offended if somebody actually grants that about science. They don't mind so much when John Lennox do it because he wears our jersey. But if Neil deGrasse Tyson does it, oh my God, we got to clutch our pearls and swoon on our couch and say, this is why the world is bad. I didn't see any Twitter responses to John making that point. Mathematics is universal too, if you haven't noticed. There's certain things that are universal. That doesn't mean that math is better than Christianity. It means math is different than Christianity. There is proof in math. There is certainty in math. In philosophy and theology, there can't be certainty and faith. This is something I guess Christians have to learn again, because it makes them really uncomfortable, because they've grown up in an evangelical world that told them they can have certainty. This is what Peter Enns in his book calls the sin of certainty, and how backwards it is for a people whose religion, and by the way, this is where Christianity is different from a lot of other religions, is Christianity puts a real primary importance to the idea of faith, to the idea that reason could get you so far, but faith's got to take you all the way. And yet we don't want to concede that. We want to argue against that. We want to, if you see Christian apologists today, like Frank Turek, like Lee Strobel, like the McDowells, like the young guys like Cameron capturing Christianity, they actually think you could prove God. The guys over at the Discovery Institute actually think you could prove God. Now, you're going to lose every philosopher in the room when you go there. Every true philosopher in the room is going to say, these guys just made a category error. Because you can't, the Christian can't prove God any more than the atheist can prove not God. That is not only logical, but the Christian knows that's theological. Or at least the Christian who understands what the Bible is saying about the faith. All right, so are you...
No,
I'm almost done. Here's my main argument about the NDT. This is going to happen again. It happens all the time. It's going to happen again and again and again. And if it's not NDT or Neil deGrasse, if it's not Neil deGrasse Tyson, it's going to be Richard Dawkins or Lawrence Krauss or Sam Harris or Jordan Peterson or Joe Rogan or somebody else who has an audience and who has a hearing and who talks about the difference in the relationship between science and reality or science and faith. And it's going to come up again. And the way you respond to it is important. And if you're seen as somebody who's not generous with people you disagree with, who doesn't steel man their arguments but straw mans them, if you're seen as somebody who nonchalantly dismisses our own hypocrisy among our own, then you're not going to be taken seriously. Then don't be surprised when people roll their eyes and walk away. And don't be surprised that the only people who clap or applaud or cheer you on are already wearing your jersey. And you will not have an impact for Jesus Christ. You will not have a profitable discussion or dialogue with anyone outside of your tribal boundaries. And this is sad, and it's small, and it's unnecessary. So I would just say I had no problem with what NDT tweeted. Here's an opportunity. You could take it, you can find common ground, and you can then introduce what you'd like to introduce. You could say, well, you know what? If Neil is talking about A, B, and C, he's exactly right. If he's talking about gravity, or if he's talking about the laws of physics, which haven't changed since about the first trillionth of a second following the Big Bang. Yeah, there's common ground to be found there. And you could actually steelman his argument by saying if Neil means we're not arguing about the sphericity of the Earth, he's right. But science, here's what you can't learn from the test tube. Here's what you can't see in a microscope or a telescope. And that is those aspects of reality that we all know are around us that science can't answer, because science is very good at answering or approaching the what, even the when, oftentimes the where and the how. Science is really good at that. Those are all natural things. But science, not so good at answering the why. And that's where theology and philosophy comes in. But when theology and philosophy comes in to answer the why, it's not certainty. It's not mathematics. It's not something you could write on a whiteboard and prove. And to try and make it that, to try and make it something that it's not, is not persuasive. It's a dead end immediately with somebody who has even a mediocre education in the differences, in the category differences between math and science and philosophy. So, having said that, I would just say to Christians that we should be aware of events like this, and we should take advantage of them instead of letting them take advantage of us. We should be aware that these are going to occur, and they're going to occur at cyclical times in the year, usually at Easter and Christmas. And we should be prepared to give every man an answer that's filled with hope, and not with insecurity, fear, anger, and frustration, which is a lot of the responses you'll see to Neil on land are angry, filled with insecurity. And this is how Christianity looks to the world that isn't Christian yet. And I got to tell you, it's not persuasive, and it's not attractive. Poe, what you got? Uh-oh.
Don't worry.
Peyton
This
Cam
will
went
only
on.
take a few seconds.
You're not done yet? Recommendations. Well, Pay finishes her claymation, or her clay, whatever that is. Thank you for throwing out the word boycott for me. I love that that you've got my back, and you could text me the word I'm searching for. Julia Galef's book, The Scout Mindset. If you aren't given to reading books, you can get it on Audible. If you aren't even given to Audible, she's got short videos about it online. She didn't invent Scout Mindset. She coined that term to talk about what psychologists have talked about for a while, and it's called motivated reasoning. It's that kind of tribal mindset that gets us to defending things that we probably shouldn't be defending, and that makes us blind to things that are wearing our own jersey. But I've never seen anyone do such a good job with it as I have in Julia's explanations and her book. You can't put it down. It's that good. But if you're not given to a book, check her out on YouTube, and follow along, because if anyone should have a scout mindset, it's Christians. And if you want to have an effective ministry, if you want to make an impact, a true impact with people who haven't bought into the Christian worldview yet, you're going to need to develop a scout mindset, because you got to call balls and strikes. And when our side steps outside of the strike zone, you've got to call it that. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, we're going to come to Pay now. Pay, you want me to hold it up and you talk about it? Is this a chapel, or is this some kind of, I see there's a flag.
It's a castle.
Oh, it's a castle. It's a castle, and it's got...
It's open in the inside. It's not like all the way... you know what I mean?
This is the tower where you normally keep...
a princess.
Yeah, or a criminal. And this is the flag showing, that we're Gondor, not Rohan, right? Very nice. What made you do and you did something else.
Yeah, I did a picture too.
And then we have this picture. I see a couple of cats that look familiar.
That's Cassie. This one's Cassie. This one's Casper, and Bella's down here.
Oh, so this is our family. This is a family picture, and I see a window with a palm tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see a couple guys with beards. That must be me and Connor. Oh, there's one bald guy with a beard right here. I guess that's me, although I never wear shorts, really. But you got
Dad,
me.
you're wearing shorts right now.
I'm wearing shorts now because I could cheat. And you have a saying stuff. Somebody says no.
Okay, so Mom is saying let's go outside, and Carter's saying no, I'm saying no, and Carter's saying let's play the vegan power video game, and
Connor's
you're saying
because I have a scout mindset, and I'm thinking about it. This is Peyton's view of our family, which is interesting. No one wants to go outside, and we live in paradise, but they've all got video game controllers in their hands. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
How come I have one? I haven't played video games in years.
Well, because you want to play the yoga video game.
I want to do yoga, but you don't need a controller for the yoga. All
Well,
right.
I made you play regular video games first.
Folks, thanks for joining us. I hope this was a learning experience for you. If you want to see a real masterclass on persuasion, though, watch the rest of that John Lennox video, because he's able to talk about the difference between Christianity and Islam and Judaism without getting the room angry at him, without seeming like he's an exclusivist, but he is. And he basically says, well, here are the differences, and here's how you could kind of measure them. in that way. So I really love that answer he gave about science and faith, even though he didn't answer the original question. So if you listen closely, you'll see how he just didn't answer the original question, but he gets to the gospel. And that's really what we should want to do, not avoid questions, but get to the gospel. So until next time, I'm John.
I'm Peyton.
And we're the Church Without Walls. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.